The wind howled across the outer edge of Colony Ring 7, carrying needles of ice that scraped against metal walls and rattled loose panels. Most people stayed inside on nights like this. The storm warnings had started early in the evening, and by sunset the sky was a solid sheet of gray, heavy with frozen clouds. Power flickered across the settlement as the grid strained against the cold. Elias Ward pulled his jacket tighter as he stepped out of the maintenance hatch and onto the narrow service walkway. His breath fogged in front of his face, vanishing just as quickly into the bitter air. He had worked on this colony for 9 years, long enough to know every groan and shudder the place made when winter really settled in. He was not a hero. He was not important. He fixed things that broke and kept things running that people forgot about until they stopped working. Tonight, the thermal lines along the outer wall had started losing pressure. If they froze solid, half the ring would lose heat. So here he was, boots crunching over a thin layer of ice, tool bag slung over one shoulder, muttering to himself about bad timing and worse engineering. "Hold together," he said to the pipes as if they could hear him. "Just hold together one more season." The walkway curved along the colony's outer shell. Beyond the railing was open darkness and a long drop to the frozen ground below. Floodlights usually lit this section, but 2 of them had already gone out, leaving long stretches in shadow. Elias reached the first junction box and knelt, fingers stiff inside his gloves as he pried open the panel. A burst of colder air rolled out, along with a faint hiss. "Yeah, I hear you," he sighed. He worked slowly and carefully, rerouting a little flow here, sealing a hairline crack there, the kind of quiet, lonely job he had grown used to. The storm roared around him, but inside the metal bones of the colony, it felt almost peaceful. That was when he heard it. At first, he thought it was just the wind slipping through a gap, a thin, high sound that came and went. He paused, head tilted. There it was again, a small, weak noise. Not mechanical, not wind. Elias frowned and stood, turning off his drill. The sudden silence made the storm seem farther away. He took a few careful steps along the walkway, eyes scanning the dark corners where the outer pipes met the wall. "Hello?" he called, feeling a little foolish. "Anyone out here?" No answer. Just the wind. He almost went back to work, almost convinced himself it was nothing. But then the sound came again, softer this time, a shaky little whimper. His stomach tightened. "All right," he muttered. "All right, I hear you." He moved toward the darkest section between 2 support struts. The floodlight above had died, leaving only a faint glow from distant lamps. He crouched and leaned over the railing, peering down into the narrow maintenance gap between the outer wall and the thermal conduits. At first he saw only shadow and frost. Then something shifted. 2 small shapes were curled together behind the largest heat pipe, pressed so close to the metal that frost had melted around them and refrozen into a slick shell. Elias blinked. They were not human. They were small, maybe the size of human children, but their bodies were slender and covered in a fine layer of pale fur that clung wetly to their skin. Their limbs were long and delicate. Faint patterns glowed under their skin, soft lines of blue-green light that pulsed weakly, like fading embers. One of them lifted her head. Large, dark eyes reflected the distant lights. Her ears, long and slightly pointed, trembled in the wind. She made that small sound again, a thin, exhausted cry. Elias's brain tried very hard to catch up with what his eyes were seeing.
"Oh, okay," he whispered.
"Okay, that's new. The colony had strict first contact rules. Report anything unknown. Seal the area. Wait for security and science teams. Do not touch." He looked at the 2 small beings again. The one who had raised her head tried to move closer to the pipe, but didn't seem to have the strength. The other one didn't move at all. Frost had formed along their fur. Their glowing markings were so dim they were almost gray. "Damn it," Elias breathed. He swung one leg over the railing and carefully lowered himself into the narrow gap. His boots slipped on ice, but he caught himself on a support beam. The heat from the main pipe soaked through his clothes, a sharp contrast to the freezing wind above. Up close, they looked even smaller. "Hey," he said softly, crouching a few feet away. "Easy. I'm not gonna hurt you." The one who was awake flinched at the sound of his voice but didn't try to run. She just watched him with wide, glassy eyes. He slowly took off one glove and held out his bare hand, palm up. "See? Nothing in it." She didn't understand the words. That was obvious. But her gaze followed his hand. After a moment, she gave a weak, uncertain sound and shifted, dragging herself a few inches closer to her companion. Elias's heart sank. They weren't just cold. They were exhausted. Maybe injured. He shrugged off his heavy jacket and wrapped it gently around both of them. They were shockingly light. The fabric dwarfed their thin frames. The awake one stiffened when the jacket touched her, then made a soft sound and pressed closer to the warmth. Her glowing lines flickered a little brighter. "That's it," Elias murmured. "Warm."
Just warm up. He carefully slid one arm under each of them. They were colder than anything he had ever touched that was still alive.
For a moment, he was afraid they wouldn't even react. Then, the awake one grabbed his sleeve with surprising strength and held on. "Okay," he said, voice tight.
We're going inside.
Climbing back up with both arms full was not graceful. He managed it anyway, breath coming in short bursts. Snow stung his face as the wind picked up again. He hurried along the walkway, no longer caring about the pipes. The nearest access hatch loomed ahead, its small light blinking green. Inside, the air felt almost tropical. He kicked the hatch closed behind him and leaned against the wall, adjusting his grip. The brighter light made it easier to see them. Their faces were delicate, with small noses and wide eyes. They looked young, very young. "All right," he said quietly. "Let's get you somewhere better." His quarters were only 2 levels down, a narrow room with a bed, a table, and too many tools stacked in corners. Not much, but warm. He laid them gently on his bed and cranked the heater up as high as it would go. Then he grabbed every blanket he owned and piled them on top. The awake one peeked out from the edge of the blanket, eyes darting around the room. Her gaze kept coming back to him. "It's okay," Elias said, keeping his movements slow. "You're safe here. For now." He filled a cup with warm water and brought it over. He dipped a cloth and carefully wiped frost from their fur. The sleeping one stirred faintly but didn't wake. He offered a bit of softened ration bar to the one who was watching him. She sniffed it, then looked at him. "Food," he said, taking a small bite himself and chewing. "See? Food." After a second, she copied him. Her movements were clumsy, but she ate. Slowly at first, then with more urgency. "Easy," he warned gently. "Slow." Minutes passed, then an hour. The storm howled outside, but inside the small room it was warm and quiet, except for the hum of the heater. The second girl finally woke with a weak gasp. She looked around in panic, trying to sit up. The first one made a soft, rapid series of sounds and leaned close, touching her forehead to the others. Their glowing markings pulsed faintly in sync. Elias stayed back, hands raised slightly to show he meant no harm. "It's all right," he said softly. "You're okay." They watched him, afraid, but not like before. Not the sharp, wild fear of hunted animals, more like confusion. He gave them more water, more small bits of food. He didn't ask questions he knew they couldn't answer. At some point, the first girl carefully reached out and touched his hand. Her fingers were warm now. A faint glow spread under her skin where she touched him, and for a brief second, Elias felt a strange tingling run up his arm. Not painful, just different. Her eyes widened slightly, as if she felt it too. Then she pulled her hand back and made a quiet sound that almost sounded like wonder.
Yeah, Elias said with a tired smile. You're weird.
I get that a lot. They huddled together under the blankets, both watching him until their eyes finally drooped closed.
Elias sat on the floor beside the bed, back against the wall. He rubbed his face with both hands. "First contact paperwork is going to be a nightmare," he muttered. But he didn't reach for the comm panel. Not yet. For now, they were just two freezing kids who had needed help. And he had been there. 7 years changed a man in quiet ways. Elias Ward had more gray in his beard now. A thin line near his chin where a welding spark had burned him last year. A slower way of standing up after long hours, crouched over broken machinery. But his life was mostly the same. He still worked maintenance. He still lived in a small room with tools stacked in corners. He still drank his coffee too strong and forgot to buy proper groceries until his cabinet was nearly empty. The galaxy, however, had not stayed the same. Humanity was no longer alone. Official contact had been made with several alien species in the years since that terrible winter night. News feeds were full of strange ships, strange languages, and long political debates about trade, borders, and safety. Elias watched it the way people watched distant storms. Interesting. A little worrying. But far away from his daily problems of cracked pipes and failing generators. He never told anyone the full truth about the two girls. He had reported finding unknown juveniles in distress near the outer wall. Security teams had arrived fast. Not human security, something else. Tall figures in dark, seamless suits that shimmered like oil on water. They had moved with quiet urgency, not violence. One of them had paused before leaving. Their helmet had tilted toward Elias. A voice, translated through his wrist device, had said only, "You gave warmth when there was none. This will be remembered." Then they were gone. No follow-up, no interviews, no medals. Just a sealed report and a suggestion from management that he avoid discussing the incident publicly. So he didn't. Life rolled on. Until the day the sky filled with light. It started as a bright line over the horizon during the morning shift. Workers stepped outside, squinting upward. A shape hung in the upper atmosphere, so large it blocked a slice of sunlight. Smooth, silver-white, silent. Not a human design. Emergency alerts lit up every screen in the colony. Across Earth. Across every human settlement. Unknown vessel in high orbit. No weapons detected. No response to hails. Then, finally, a signal came through. It did not go to military command. It did not go to the United Earth Council. It went to a maintenance office on Colony Ring 7. Elias was elbow deep in a wall panel when his supervisor came running down the corridor, face pale.
Elias, she said breathless. Drop that.
Now?
He blinked.
Pipe's about to... Now! Something in her voice made him obey. He wiped his hands on a rag and followed her to the admin room, where 3 security officers and a floating holoscreen were waiting. On the screen was an alien. Tall, slender, fur like liquid silver. Lines of soft blue light moved across their face and neck in slow patterns. Their eyes were large, calm, and completely focused. A translator icon blinked. "Human designated Elias Ward," the alien voice said, smooth and musical through the speaker. "You are requested." Elias looked behind him. "Yeah," the security officer muttered. "That's you." "Requested for what?" Elias asked. The glowing patterns on the alien skin shifted, brightening slightly. "By decree of the Crown of the Valari Concord, your presence is required at the royal capital. Transportation has been provided. Departure window. 2 of your hours." The room was dead silent. Elias laughed once, short and confused.
"You've got the wrong guy. The alien's eyes did not blink."
"We do not," his supervisor whispered. "Elias, what did you do?" "I fix heaters," he said weakly. Within an hour, his entire life was packed into a small bag he didn't remember filling. He tried to argue, tried to refuse, but every government on Earth had suddenly become very interested in his cooperation. A shuttle took him from the colony to a human orbital station. From there, a smaller craft, sleek, white, and humming with power he could feel in his bones, carried him up to the alien ship. Inside, everything curved gently. No sharp corners. No, the air smelled faintly sweet, like rain on stone. Lights glowed from the walls themselves. The beings who met him were tall and graceful, their movements careful, almost delicate. They wore fitted garments that shimmered softly, matching the glow beneath their skin. None of them touched him, but they stayed close, like a respectful escort. Elias felt like a stray dog that had wandered into a royal parade. He said as they guided him down a wide corridor. "You mind telling me what this is about?" One of them glanced at him. Their translator chimed. "You will be informed in the presence of those who called you." That's not comforting. They did not seem to understand the joke. "The journey took days, though the ship moved faster than any human vessel ever built." Elias spent most of the time staring out a viewing window at stars that stretched into thin lines during jumps. He barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw 2 small freezing shapes curled behind a heat pipe. He wondered if this was about them. He wondered if he had broken some law he never knew existed. Eventually, the ship slowed. A world filled the window. It was blue and silver wrapped in thin rings that glittered with structures. Cities floated in the upper atmosphere like clusters of glass petals. Light moved across the surface in soft waves. "Capital world of the Valari Concord," his escort said. Elias swallowed. "Of course it is." The shuttle that took him down passed between towers that seemed grown rather than built. Bridges of light connected them. Vehicles drifted silently through open air. He had never felt so human in his life. Small, heavy, loud, they brought him to a vast chamber open to the sky. The ceiling arched high above, transparent, showing drifting clouds. The floor shone like polished stone, reflecting soft blue light from patterns etched into its surface. Dozens of Valari stood in wide circles along the edges. Their glowing markings shifted in complex rhythms Elias could not read. At the far end of the chamber, 2 figures stood on a raised platform. Even before he could see their faces clearly, he knew. Same fur, same patterns of light, but brighter, stronger, flowing like living constellations under their skin. They were taller now, taller than most of the others. They wore garments that shimmered with threads of gold and deep blue. Royal, important, powerful. But their eyes were the same. Elias stopped walking.
"No way," he whispered. The escort stepped aside.
The 2 women descended from the platform together. The chamber was so quiet, he could hear his own breathing. They stopped a few feet in front of him. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, both of them bent one knee and lowered their heads. A wave of light rippled across the room as every marking on every Valari in the chamber flared bright in shock. Elias stared, horrified. "Oh, no. Don't do that. Please don't do that." One of the women lifted her head. Her voice came through the translator, but softer than the others he had heard before. "Elias Ward," she said, and there was warmth in the way she shaped his name. "You remember us." He let out a shaky breath.
You?
"You were kids." "We were," the other said gently, "and we were dying." Images flashed in his mind. frost in their fur, weak, glowing lines, small hands gripping his sleeve. "You made it," he said, voice rough. "We did," the first replied, "because of you." He rubbed the back of his neck, overwhelmed. "I just turned up the heat." A faint musical sound passed between them. It took him a second to realize it was laughter. Behind them, the watching court remained frozen in stunned silence. The first sister stood fully and placed a hand over her chest. "I am Sarai, first daughter of the Radiant line." The second mirrored the gesture. "I am Lumi, second daughter of the Radiant line." Elias blinked. "Radiant, like royal? "Yes," Sarai said. He looked around at the massive chamber, the watching nobles, the floating lights. "You've got to be kidding me!" Lumi's glow softened. "On the night you found us, our transport had been destroyed. We were fleeing those who wished our line to end."
"Assassins," Sarai added calmly.
Elias closed his eyes. "Of course it was assassins. We escaped," Lume continued.
"But our bodies are not made for cold worlds. We would have slept and not woken." Sarai stepped closer.
"You did not know who we were. You did not ask what we could give you. You gave warmth because we were in pain." Elias shrugged helplessly. "That's normal where I'm from." A murmur of shifting light moved through the Valari watching. Sarai's eyes shone. Lume extended her hand slowly. He hesitated, then took it. Her skin was warm, the glow beneath it steady and strong. "Nothing like that freezing night. In our culture," she said, "a life debt must be answered. But never before has such a debt been owed to another species." "You don't have to. We do," Sarai said gently but firmly. She turned, guiding him to face the watching court. "And so does our people."
Thousands of glowing eyes fixed on him.
Elias wished very badly to be back with his broken pipes. Instead, he stood in the heart of an alien empire, holding the hand of a princess he had once wrapped in an old work jacket. And he had the strange feeling that the small choice he made on a freezing night had just grown bigger than he could possibly understand. The great chamber did not return to normal after the sisters spoke. Light still moved across the Valari court in restless waves. Colors brightened and dimmed along their skin in patterns that felt like whispers Elias could not hear. He stood where Sarai and Lume had left him, painfully aware of his worn boots on a floor that looked like frozen starlight. He had never liked being the center of attention. Now he felt like the center of a galaxy he did not understand. Sarai lifted one hand, and the shifting lights slowly calmed. The room grew quiet enough that Elias could hear the faint hum of the open sky above. "Let the record show," she said, her voice carried gently by hidden speakers, "that the human Elias Ward stands before this court not as a subject, not as a prisoner, and not as a curiosity." Her glowing markings brightened, steady and proud. "He stands as the one who gave us warmth when our lives were close to ending." A low ripple passed through the gathered nobles. Lume stepped forward. "By the laws of the Radiant line, a life debt of this weight cannot be answered with gifts alone. It must shape the future." Elias leaned slightly toward her. "Future of what?" he muttered. She gave him the smallest sideways glance, and for a moment he saw the child she had been, hiding behind a heat pipe. "Of our people," she said softly. From the far side of the chamber, another figure moved forward, taller than most. Their glow was sharper, more angular, like shards of ice instead of flowing water. When they spoke, the translator rendered the voice as cool and precise. "The court does not question that a debt exists," the noble said. "But we question the scale of what is proposed." Elias had the feeling this one did not like him already. Sarai did not turn, but her light shifted in a way that felt like focus.
"Speak, Counselor Thalen." Thalen inclined his head. "The humans are new to the wider galaxy."
"Their history is short and filled with internal conflict." Their expansion is fast. Their emotions are intense. A few Valari lights flickered in what might have been agreement.
Thalon continued. To bind our future policy to the actions of a single human, an act performed without knowledge or intent of alliance, would be reckless.
Elias raised a hand awkwardly. I agree with the single human part.
I'm really not that impressive. No one laughed. He let his hand drop. Lume stepped forward now, standing level with Thalon.
Her glow was softer than his, but it did not waver.
When we were small, she said, and the cold was taking us, did the human hesitate because we were unknown? Thalon's lights dimmed slightly. He did not understand the risk. Exactly, Lumi replied. He did not measure our value.
He did not ask who our enemies were. He saw fear and pain, and he acted. She turned slowly, letting her gaze move over the court. If this is recklessness, then it is a form our people have forgotten. Elias swallowed. His chest felt tight in a way that had nothing to do with fear. Sarai raised her hand again, and an image formed in the air above the center of the chamber, a perfect glowing shape of a small shuttle, broken and smoking. Then, two tiny figures stumbling through snow under a dark sky.
Elias sucked in a breath.
You recorded that. Our rescue team did, Sarai said gently.
They arrived minutes after we left your care. The image shifted. It showed his small room, blankets, a human heater humming loudly, a rough hand offering water. I look terrible, Elias muttered. Lume's light flickered in amusement. You looked warm. The image faded. Sarai faced the court again. Because this human acted, the Radiant Line survived. Because the Radiant Line survived, the Civil War ended before it could spread to 13 more systems. Billions of lives continued in peace. A heavy silence followed that. Elias stared at her.
I just fixed heaters.
You fixed more than you knew, she said. Thalon stepped forward again, though his movements were slower now.
No one denies the outcome, but to grant a developing species protected ally status, military, political, and cultural, will change the balance of the Concord. He looked directly at Elias. Humans are strong, creative, but also unpredictable.
Elias lifted both hands.
That one's fair. A faint ripple of light murmurs passed through the court again. Sarai spoke, her voice calm but firm.
Yes.
Humans are unpredictable. They feel deeply.
They act quickly. They form bonds easily. She looked at Elias, then back at the court.
And yet, when given power, many species in our history have chosen control.
Expansion. Dominance. Her glow deepened. This human, with no power at all, chose care. The words seemed to hang in the air. Lumi added softly, if such a choice can be made by an ordinary human, without reward, without witness, then it is not rare. It is part of them.
Elias blinked hard and looked at the floor.
Thalon was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked, and if we bind ourselves to them, and they change?
If their kindness fades when their strength grows?
Elias looked up before he could stop himself. Then hold us to it, he said.
Every glowing eye in the chamber turned to him again. His heart pounded. He swallowed.
I don't know politics.
I don't know fleets or treaties, but I know this. Humans aren't kind because it's smart.
Half the time it makes things harder. A few lights flickered in curiosity.
We do it because we can't stand seeing someone suffer when we could help, he went on. If we ever stop being that way, then we won't be the same people you met. He shrugged, feeling very small. But right now, that's who we are. Messy, loud. But we show up. Silence followed. Not tense, just deep. Sarai looked at Talon. You fear their strength. I respect it, Thalon corrected.
As do we, she said. Which is why we do not seek to control it.
We seek to stand beside it.
She turned, raising both hands now. Light flared across her skin in a pattern so bright Elias had to squint.
By the authority of the Radiant Line, we propose the Warmth Accord. A symbol formed in the air. 2 different hands, one larger, one smaller, meeting at the center in shared light. Under this accord, Lumi continued, her voice clear, the human species will be recognized as a protected ally of the Valari Concord. We will share knowledge, trade, and defense. We will answer their distress calls as we would our own. Murmurs surged, lights flashing in complex debate. And, Sarai added, Valari vessels will be bound by new law to render aid to vulnerable beings encountered beyond our borders without demand for payment or advantage.
That caused a visible shock through the court. Thalen's glow flared.
You would rewrite exploration doctrine for this? For them, Lume said softly, and for who we wish to be. The chamber filled with shifting color as nobles conferred in low tones. Elias stood frozen, wishing for a chair. After a long time, a tone rang through the air, clear and resonant. The lights across the room began to sync, pulsing in shared rhythm. Sarai lowered her hands. The vote is called. One by one, the Valari raised their arms. Light flowed from their markings into the air, forming streams that joined the symbol above. Some streams were bright and immediate, others flickered, hesitant, before joining. A few did not rise at all. Elias watched, hardly breathing. Thalen stood still the longest. His glow shifted through several sharp patterns. Then, slowly, he raised his hand. A pale but steady stream of light joined the others. The symbol above the chamber blazed, brighter than anything Elias had ever seen. It is done, Sarai said. The sound that followed was not cheering, not exactly. It was a rising harmony of tones and light that made the air itself seem to hum. Lumi turned to Elias, eyes bright. Your warmth has become law.
He laughed weakly. That's,
A lot of pressure for a guy who forgets to do his laundry. She stepped closer and, very gently, touched her forehead to his hand, just as she had when she was small. Her glow warmed his skin. Then we will remember it with you, she said. Above them, the symbol of the Warmth Accord shone over the court, over the city, and soon, over a galaxy that was about to learn that the most powerful thing humans had ever built was not a weapon. It was the simple decision to care.